Farmers' protests, a big challenge for Modi. Bigger than demonetization, GST. Delhi, this was written 28th November. 3 farm laws enacted in September by the Modi government. So there was the Green Revolution in the 1970s that transformed agriculture, the agriculture sector being the silver lining for the Indian economy during the pandemic. But there has been rural distress. This article is on the print and it's written, by so that's important to note. It's kind of weird because they're saying, politics has added fuel to the rural distress that's been on the rise since the 70s. And I'm like, isn't rural distress because of politics? So it's all about like blaming the other party. The other party didn't help the farmers, but we helped the farmers. And the farmers have been mad at the previous parties. They're just like confused. It's not us that they're mad at. Indian farmers intensify protests against new laws. CTV News. I just hope they tell me what these laws actually are. But they have demands, the farmers. And it goes beyond the laws. So the farmers want a consistent price for all the crops. They want to keep it at a minimum price that's standard and does not change. And the government is like, it should change because things change all the time. No farmers, no food. Determined to win this fight, we will go back only after the new farm laws are dismissed. Something to do with the land. Going to make it easier for corporates to buy the land away from farmers. And I'm like wondering if corporations buy the land, and these are like Ambani and things like that, then who are these lands going to? And I think what it's saying is like you're going to sell it. Oh, okay. I think it's like you sell the farm to the companies, and the companies will tell you what to do. You have no choice in doing what you want to do with the land. It's no longer your land. The government is like, no, that's not going to happen. I don't know what it is exactly about these laws that will make corporations be able to do that. So that's what I'm trying to figure out. Because why? But the farmers clearly have an idea why. But I don't see an actual. But it seems like it's going a lot beyond just these laws. They just want better treatment. They feel like the government isn't treating them as the most important part of the economy. It's about the market, the wholesale vegetable and fruit market. The laws will lead the government to stop buying grain at minimum guaranteed prices and result in exploitation by corporations that will push down prices. But the current government insists that reforms will benefit farmers by allowing them to market their produce and boost production through private investment. But farmers say they were never consulted. And like this is what's being repeated in different articles. It's almost the same words, if not the exact same. For nearly 2 months. 2 months. I had no idea this has been happening for 2 months. The situation escalated last week when tens of thousands marched to New Delhi when they clashed with police. The laws added to already existing resentment from farmers, who often complain of being ignored by the government. And it's about needing better irrigation systems and additional loan waivers. So basically, I'm going to link this as well. It's a video on Instagram and a lot of information. is coming through social media because there's not a lot of information on mainstream media, especially Indian news. But a lot of people are speaking up using social media, and Instagram, I think, is a main one. So they want to understand both sides of the problem. So yeah, look at the solutions. What are the government and the farmers' mistakes? There's a video on the truth of farm bills. Farmers don't trust the government. There's a loophole in farmers' protections. Corporates can exploit magistrates. Farmers don't understand laws, according to a lot of these people, which they feel like is the truth. Farmers need to know their rights. Yeah, knowing your rights. People are saying, also, just as the government is, that perhaps the farmers don't quite understand the laws. And from what I'm reading, it's more about just a dissatisfaction with the government, just not being happy with the current government in the way it's treating the citizens of India by treating it as less secular than it is. It's a fight for the nation. The mayor of Calgary had recently talked about protesters, anti-mask rally, to quit it, that the reason for protesting is really for the thrill of it and not quite because they care about people. And that's that's kind of a mean thing to say, whoever it might be, because they're bored, because it feels good, it's exciting, it's a purposeful thing. Just, I don't think more than millions of people would come together if it was just for the thrill of it. I think there's an underlying issue. I think this is what the video also kind of touches upon, is the trust in the people involved on various levels of the operation of someone's career, life. And from what I can see from the articles too, there are sentiments from the farmers themselves stating that this is going to be like a siege, and they were serious and they kind of wanted to overthrow this government. How can you build trust in a system not built on trust and more built on bribes and loopholes? They say, make it simple, is what this video seems to say.
कॉर्पोरेट्स एक्सप्लॉइट कर सकते हैं. फार्मर एक कंज्यूमर है और कंज्यूमर कोर्ट में जा सकता है. सुप्रीम कोर्ट का एक डिसीजन लॉ ऑफ द लैंड क्लॉज बाय क्लॉज एक्सप्लेन दैट इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर इज ब्रोकन.
So yes, the second problem that they point out here is terrible infrastructure, and this includes the fact that they have on market areas throughout the regions, and these are not evenly spread out. They have different types of competition, so they're not the most effective in guaranteeing whether farmers basically make a profit or lose a lot. Yeah, it's just like a general level of ineffectiveness. And there's also middlemen. So there's middlemen, which I did not know existed. It seems like a cool service, making sure the price is right, finding appropriate storage places, I think, and just like I think explaining the laws. I'm not sure about that one. The government says that the middleman denies fair price for farmers. Monopsony. So, definition. It's a market structure in which a single buyer substantially controls the market as a major purchaser of goods and services offered by many would-be sellers. And so, yeah, corporation, because isn't a corporation usually the one who substantially controls the market as the major purchaser of goods and services? The farmers seem to be worried that the corporations are going to be the single buyer, the major purchaser, and not them. So yeah, there was also this issue of contracts being verbal with corporations rather than written. How is that even allowed? How is that even legal? I mean, it's just about, like they say, it's about the farmers knowing their rights. It's about written documentation because it just makes sense that people will take advantage. Like verbal contracts relying on memory. Have you heard the term gaslighting? They might not have, but taking away the middlemen who the farmers have said have helped them. And so let's see what they say here.
जब मिडिलमैन कोई वैल्यू एडिशन तो करता नहीं है लेकिन फिर भी दाम बढ़ाता है.
So they're saying that the middlemen, because the government is paying them, they help, but they don't have any monetary value. So you're saving on, is that salary? You're saving on salary? There's a reason there's middlemen, right? Like, what was the initial reason for putting middlemen there? Aren't they of functional positive use? Isn't that more important if you're helping farmers understand laws and systems and services, guiding them? Isn't that more helpful in the long run? So, yeah, and here they're saying they're supposed to provide services to the farmers in the form of a marketplace. APMCs.
कहता है कि 1/3 मंडीज में तो टॉयलेट भी नहीं है.
They're talking about the market areas now, how the market areas don't have any facilities or cold storage facilities. That's frustrating because they have to travel so far to sell the food, and the only marketplaces available, the only places for them to sell without going through corporations. And it's just an uncomfortable place for a human being selling food to be. Caring for your farmers. Yeah, farmers are highly regarded. They are supposed to be respected as the major keystone of this land, of this economy. So to be treated that way and not be taken care of as farmers. So yeah, let's keep watching. And everyone's like, well, it's not perfect, but we'll work on it. But the question is, why hasn't this been worked on? Why did people not think about this in a planned, respectful way? We have the capability. We're human beings. We have the capability of thinking ahead, of caring. We are really good organizers. We have to ask ourselves why it's not perfect, because we have the brains to do it. So make the marketplaces better, give them facilities, treat them well. And what farmers are afraid of is that the corporations will take advantage of it, buy these items at these lower prices, selling it in marketplaces that are not Mandis, which is more traditional marketplaces, right? Like more open, free market, wholesale marketplaces of India, of North India. They're afraid it's gonna get worse because the Mandis aren't good right now. They wanna keep it a certain way so the corporations don't take advantage. Government would have to also simultaneously make sure that the Mandis have full facilities. See why the farmers are like, yeah, that's not gonna happen. Why would the farmers trust that the government would do that? The government hasn't, I don't think, that has said that they're going to also improve the Mandis. So that's not happening, right? And that is exactly why they're angry. It's been a long time, probably since the 70s, since the Green Revolution, that this has been a problem. You needed to do fencing, sanitation. It's not that difficult if you treated people with respect. Make the Mandis better. But why hasn't that been done? Why do they have to beg? Why do they have to be on the streets to do something so simple? Of course they're angry. Proper civilization would never do what the government's been doing. And so it makes absolute sense that they're on the streets.
So my 1.5 crores test
को सोलर पैनल सारी मंडीज फार्मर्स को देना शुरू करेंगे तो फार्मर्स मंडी छोड़कर बाहर क्यों जाएगा?
You're talking about being in the future. You have to build the present that can sustain it. Declining soil health, over farming, not using the right crops in rotation with each other, and climate change. Of course, there's declining soil condition. They say overpopulation, but it's also over-export, right? You're pushing farmers to, I don't know, it just doesn't, if you're pushing farmers to like make more for corporations, to make more for the economy, like, isn't it more important that the money goes back? Isn't it more important to ensure that the soil remains farmable for the long-term health of the economy? There's this new Netflix show that's coming up. So they say that the show is based on the archaeological findings of Sutton Hoo, and this is in the Britannic Isles, Suffolk, England, and so found basically evidence that they cut up the land. They built trenches, literally cut up the land. They built trenches to mark different landowners and different fields. They had to leave when the fields dried up. The settlement was eventually abandoned beginning of Bronze Age. So before 1500 BCE, when they started to have sheep and cattle, which was enclosed by wooden stakes. The acidic sandy soil eventually became leached and fertile, and it was likely for that reason. And yeah, if you look at places that farm continuously and do not experience really the land becoming infertile, that's because they know what they're doing. They rotate crops accordingly. They move certain lands so they don't overfarm one area. If you've heard of clearing the land, abandoning an area before it becomes infertile, letting it grow, letting it replenish. Everyone's like, well, there's not enough land for that. But it does tie back to capitalism. It does tie back to consumerism, tie back to the ideals that we are feeding society. Cannot blame overpopulation when capitalism exists. I wanted to add something. So, a big communication failure. Failure occurs. How bigger the population, the harder it is, for sure. But there's lack of communication in general, I think, in more colonized societies. Because of the hierarchical nature, they treat people on the lower levels, like lower income, lower caste, as dumb. Like, they just wouldn't understand. Right? Why bother explaining when they just wouldn't understand? That's not right. There is a total lack of respect continuously. The communication failure, the lack of facilities in the marketplace, not enforcing someone to help farmers ensure that they're not being taken advantage of. Not everyone can read and write. Therefore, having government officials literally help farmers. Why wouldn't the government help farmers? You're literally selling farmers as slaves to corporations. And literally, you are the businessman. So, of course, they might not even see it as slavery because they already see humans in their mind as slaves. Love and respect farmers. Waive loans. Why do farmers need loans? They're farmers. They are feeding the world. Especially if you're going to be gaining from their work anyway. Why would you ask them to pay when you're getting the money from them? You pay them. They're working for you. They're working for your nation. Literally, you need to give land back to the proper stewards of the land. In this case, farmers. Corporations are literally manifestations of mental illness. They are hoarding money and resources for gain that doesn't even exist completely in reality. The money is literally going into a vault and just sitting there for themselves. continue to make sure you don't rely on corporations. They're not fast fashion, they're not fast anything, they're not super cheap. Too much of globalized shipping increases pollution and also increases pressure on corporations who are taking hold of local land. What to do as next steps? Corporations can't change. If we ensure that farmers are loved, respected, everything is given to them, technology is given to them, information is given to them, people are there to help them no matter what. There's a community. When things like that happen, when they grow the right kind of crops, when they're innovative in their methods, and they make that profit and they give back to the community, things like that will eventually abolish capitalism. As usual, 4:34. Yeah. So, crescent moon outside. It's very pretty. Yeah.